Hey, David Brewster here, new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Scott Gorham, and I've had some requests to feature more of Thin Lizzy's music. There is a Chordplay episode from a few years ago, not to mention lessons related to Gary Moore and also John Sykes, too. And this is the first time we've actually looked at Scott's music, Scott himself. And for a lot of people, it seems like they overlook Scott. They think of Brian Robertson or Gary Moore or John Sykes. And for me, when I think of Thin Lizzy, especially in the 70s, I think of Scott Gorham. He's a big part of their sound, their image, definitely long hair, playing a Les Paul, stage clothes, rocking out. That's what I think of when I think of Thin Lizzy. And Scott's career started around 1974, which is about the same time he joined forces with Thin Lizzy. He appears on 9 of their studio albums, 3 live albums, and some compilations. He also appears on albums by Asia and Supertramp, Phil Lynot's solo album, not to mention a Pat Travers album, too. Definitely, Scott Gorham is a legendary guitarist. So I did make a post about this on my Facebook page not that long ago, and they just revealed the new inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How is Thin Lizzy not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Letting people like Outkast and Gwen Stefani in, and they just completely ignore Thin Lizzy and Phil Lynott? That's crazy. They should have a statue of Phil out in the parking lot. So when you're checking out a certain player like Scott Gorham, it's a great idea to scope out his influences, which reveal certain things that pop up in his music, licks and playing habits and techniques and stuff. And it's really interesting because with Scott, his influences are definitely some guitarists we've looked at before, Hendrix and some players like that. Also notice the Allman Brothers, the harmony guitar kind of creeping in. And also Gary Moore, too. Now Gary and Scott played together in Thin Lizzy, and definitely Scott revealed or admitted that Gary was very influential, exposed him to some different techniques and some different ideas. But anyway, here's Scott Gorham's elusive musical influences. And as far as Scott's actual soloing secrets, the things he typically does when he grabs a guitar and plays a lick or a solo or a fill or something, and there's a lot, modified blues phrasing, minor pentatonic scales. He does dip into modal tonalities and traditional scales too. Very expressive bending and vibrato, repeating licks, harmony guitar stuff. There's all kinds of stuff. So here's Scott's soloing secrets. The music and ideas in this episode came from 4 Thin Lizzy albums, and I literally went through all of their albums, listened to all their music and their songs, and I had to separate the songs depending on who played lead, and especially back in their glory days, when Brian and Scott were in the guitar department. They were pioneering with their twin guitar approach, trading solos and then playing harmony together. Even though there were some groups on the scene that were doing that, like the Allman Brothers and Judas Priest, Thin Lizzy did influence the next generation like Iron Maiden and Metallica and bands like that. But anyway, here's an image with the 4 albums I pulled music from for this lesson. Alright, with the opening jam, that was basically the harmony part from the song Emerald from the album Jailbreak, and I've always liked that section of the song, and this lesson does feature some harmony guitar, which is definitely a staple and trademark sound in Thin Lizzy's music. We're going to start with some harmony and end with some harmony. I was tempted to make this an entire harmonized guitar lesson, but I wanted to feature some non-harmonized licks from Scott too, so we're kind of, mixing it up a little bit. But this is basically revolving around A Dorian, loosely. And there's 2 guitars harmonizing in thirds. So the first guitar part, which is what I played during the opening jam, is like this. Right? Something like that. So a little bit slower. You can see we're playing right there. And we're starting on that C note, like that, and there's a lot of legato too, hammer-ons and pull-offs, you can hear it. And then, so the first time you're going down to that A note, the second time you're going up to that G. And then, one more time there. Pass through it right there. pass is almost identical, it just ends on a different note. Second time you're going to end on that C right there. So that's guitar 1 basically, and then guitar 2 is playing in thirds, a third below. So they're basically doing, right? So for that second guitar part right there, you know, we're starting on that A note, working our way down to that lower E, and the second time through it, we're going, you know, from the A note, working our way down, and then going to that higher E right there. Like that. And then the sequence after that, like that. And you're going to basically, you know, grab that G and then immediately hop over and grab that C at the end. And that's the first pass through. Then the second pass is the exact same, but you're going to end differently. Right. The second time you're going to grab that G and then end on that A, like that. Now if you put all that together, like I said, we're harmonizing thirds. Right? Or something like that. So when you find those intervals and start kind of moving around, you know, I'm using the MXR clone looper to kind of help me with this, but we were doing... just ear-catching sound, and harmonized guitar parts are awesome. Next up's a lick from the song Romeo and the Lonely Girl. This is also from the album Jailbreak, and I grabbed this lick because it's really different. I don't really recall ever seeing this lick anywhere else, but like this. One more time. So it's interesting because he's doing, you know, like a series of pull-offs there on the B string at the start, that D, C, and B, and then grab that G note. And then he does like a hammer-on pull-off between that B and that C, and then back to that G. So it's interesting because you've got... And then just basically grab that A note, bend it to B twice. Something like that. Not really hard to play, just a really interesting, cool phrase right there. Next up's the opening to Scott's solo from Bad Reputation, and this is honestly my favorite Thin Lizzy song. I'm not really sure how this song didn't become a mega hit when it was released, because this song rocks. And something like this. Something like that. So it starts with that kind of heavy riff, and then you hear him bend this E note up to F sharp, and it's just the phrasing, like the way he's putting the solo together, the way he starts it, the way he phrases it and stuff. It's really cool. And you hear him kind of slide that E off, and you hear him shift back into this D on the B string, and then he very slowly bends that up 2 whole steps. So you're moving that D up to an F sharp, like that. And then when you release that bend after you get the 2 whole steps, then grab this B note and then bend that D a whole step to E. Right? And then there's a quick hammer-on pull-off between that B and D, and then you're going to bend that D to E again. Bend that D to E, grab that B, and then bend this A to B. Like that. You know, something like that. Wicked solo, and that's a wicked song, too. Next up's a section of Scott's solo from the song Waiting for an Alibi from the album Black Rose, and this is definitely a great pentatonic pull-off legato workout like this. Something like that. So it's C sharp minor pentatonic, and we're going to start with 3 pull-offs between that E and C sharp at the beginning. And then you're just going to basically double up those pull-offs on the strings going down. So it's 3 on the high E, and then 2 on the B, 2 on the G, 2 on the D, and then you do this. So right there. Something like that. Then the second phrase is the same, but it ends with a bend on that B note there. Right, like that. Then the last time is like just the crazy pull-off workout right here. Right, so right there you started on the high E, walked all the way down to the A, and then back up to the high E again. Start with the 3 on the high E, and then everything else is just, 2 pull-offs. Right, and then right there when you get back to the high E, then you want to shift up between that F sharp and E, and then that G sharp and F sharp. Then you reach all the way up and grab that B there. And then you're going to grab, basically this high C sharp and bend that up a whole step. Like that. Now one more time all the way through. Now last run on that high E string. That's really hard to do. It's deceptively difficult because you have to shift and do that kind of pull-off legato move. And then grab that high bend. That's actually deceptively hard to do right there. Okay, last but not least is the harmonized solo from the song Wild One. This is from the album Fighting, and as promised, we're going to end this lesson with more harmony from Thin Lizzy here. And the first guitar I'm going to share is really simple. He's just basically playing right out of the box, and this is in D minor pentatonic. So guitar 1 is doing this. Like that, just right out of the box. One more time. So you're doing this kind of gradual sequence. And you're going to basically mimic that on every string group. So right there, and then do it again right there, and again right there. And when you get down to that low D, then you're going to slide that C to D and back, like that. And then you start doing, and that's kind of weird because you're starting on the lower note, then doing a hammer-on pull-off. Something like that. So that's guitar 1 right there, right? And then guitar 2 is basically mimicking the exact same thing, 2 pentatonic positions higher. So now we're mixing thirds and fourths for this harmony. So guitar 2 is actually starting on this high A right there. And it mirrors that same sequence we did right here. But it's starting up here like this. So one more time, start on that A. And then, so it's almost a mirror image of what we did in the box, but right there. Then you put both those guitar parts together harmonized, and you've got this. One more time. Really interesting, like melodic, harmonized guitar part, and that's early, in Scott's time with Thin Lizzy. All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with this look at Scott Gorham, and definitely an overlooked legendary icon of the guitar, 70s rock for sure. And I definitely always pay tribute and remember Scott, but it seems like a lot of players kind of forget, like, oh yeah, the other guy in Thin Lizzy, and it's like the other guy, that's Scott Gorham, man. And I know Gary Moore and John Sykes and even Brian Robertson, his time with Motorhead, maybe that kind of accelerated his name and his legacy a little bit more than Scott. I don't know what the reason is, but I always, try to basically pay tribute to lesser known, often forgotten, legends of the guitar. And Scott Gorham is an absolute legend, essential. His licks, his image, the Les Paul, the whole thing, very crucial. Harmony guitar parts influence millions of players and fans all over the world. And that's really important to remember that stuff and pay tribute to those, pioneers and legends for sure, which is what I'm trying to do on my channel right here. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Net Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.